Hey everyone, George here. I just wanted to sit down real quick and have a conversation with you about the movie 976 Evil. This movie was directed by Robert Englund. You know Robert Englund, he played Freddy Krueger. And he actually met his wife while making this movie. Nancy Booth was the set decorator on this film. This film stars Stephen Jeffries, Patrick O'Brien, Jim Metzler, Maria Rubel, Leslie Dean, J.J. Cohen, and Sandy Dennis. The writers of this movie are Rhett Topham and Brian Helgeland. Visually, this movie looks really interesting, and that's because the cinematographer of this movie was Paul Elliott. With that out of the way, let me tell you what this movie is about. So this film follows two young men in high school. They're both cousins. One is the bad boy in school, and the other one is the school nerd. And basically, they come across a hotline called 976 Evil that you call up and it'll tell you your horoscope. But it doesn't necessarily just tell you your horoscope. It tells you if you act now and do a certain task, good things will happen for you. And so they proceed to do so, and good things happen, and also bad things happen, because it's called 976 Evil for a reason. Real quick, before we get started, I just want to warn you that I am going to spoil this movie, so if you don't want to know what happens in this movie and just watch this film with fresh eyes, turn off this video, go watch the movie, then come back, sit down, and hear what I have to say, because it's an interesting movie, it really is. So in this movie, there's this card that tells you dial 976 Evil for your horoscope. So in the movie, like I said, it follows two young men, these two boys in high school, who end up using this hotline, right? And they're both opposite ends of the spectrum of, I guess, like high school hierarchy. One is like the bad boy in school, rides around on a motorcycle, wears a leather jacket. And then the other one is a nerd, an absolute 1980s depiction of a nerdy kid. He has a overbearing religious mother. So these two cousins, one of them, the bad boy in school, his name is Spike. And the nerdy one, his name is Hoax, which is really weird. They never explain why his name is Hoax. Like the word hoax, that's his name. Basically, Hoax looks up to Spike and admires Spike. And Spike, actually, he's very embarrassed by his cousin, but he looks out for him. He makes sure he doesn't get bullied too much in school and stuff. But they have a decent relationship, a friendly relationship. But honestly, these two characters, and I'll even say this about the movie itself, feels like they're pulled from a Stephen King novel. You know, there's Stephen King novels and also like adaptations as well, where there's the cool kid or like the bad boy is friends with the nerd in school. You know, it's not only Stephen King that covers it, but this movie does have a lot of Stephen King vibes to it. And imagine that. Imagine like this very 80s/1950s feeling movie and setting in a small town where there are two cousins that go to the same school, and one is the bad boy who like cuts class and rides around his motorcycle in a leather jacket. And the other one is like very much a nerd who like drives like a little Vespa and is like the 1980s depiction of a nerd. So these two are the main characters of this film. So these two cousins, Hoax and Spike, don't only just go to the same school. They actually they don't technically live in the same home. Basically, Spike's parents are not around, and Hoax's mom is taking care of him. So Spike is basically living what looks like the apartment above the garage, and Hoax lives in the house with his overbearing mother, and they interact with each other. They have a weird relationship with the mom of the house. This mother is overbearing. She's very crazy, very comically religious. And Spike is like the complete opposite of that kind of character, where they just clash and he does his own thing and he just rides his hog around and he just like living his life being like a cool kid in the 80s. And the overbearing aunt to Spike does not like that. And she tries to push her religious boundaries on him, which doesn't really work, but it works on the son, Hoax. These two cousins have this interesting dynamic where they kind of live under the same roof, and they go to the same school, but they're also polar opposite characters. But what he does is, he likes gambling. He plays poker with these other, like, bad boys in school. And, he loses a lot of money. He gets a lot of money. He owes the head of this, like, gang that plays poker all the time a ton of money. And so he uses this hotline that tells him his, like, horoscope. He uses this hotline to help him get the money that he can pay this, like, gang leader in the school. And when he calls the hotline, it's not so straightforward, the information he gets. It's, like, told in, like, a riddle. Basically, the voice on this hotline is very reminiscent of Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street. And, it basically sounds like Freddy Krueger talking to him and telling him this riddle of how he can get his reward, his riches, so he can not have to deal with any issues with his gang leader at school. So the character Spike eventually continues down this path in this movie, and he lets go of this hotline. He doesn't want to do it anymore. So basically, he takes his bike to a shop, and he's getting something repaired for his bike. While he waits, he goes to a phone booth right next door, and he makes a call to this hotline and basically tells him that he should steal from this store. He goes back and he steals from the store, and then he changes his mind. He has a change of heart. He's like, this isn't right. This is like a shop, a business owner that I know and I talk to all the time, and I get my bike repaired. They're actually, like, repairing my bike right now. So, like, why am I doing this? So he puts the stuff back. So he steps outside. That telephone in the phone booth rings. He goes, picks it up. It's the hotline telling him to look both ways before he crosses the road. And Spike is, like, annoyed, like, whatever, hangs up. He steps outside and almost gets hit by a car. So there is another character in this movie that actually saves his life. It is this private detective. So basically, the movie opens with someone dying at the hands of this hotline. So clearly this private investigator is investigating this hotline for someone. They don't really explain who, but this PI is investigating this hotline. So he's following Spike around. And so he was sitting at the diner, actually in a really cool shot, a really nice blocked out shot. This guy, this private investigator, is sitting at the diner across the street, these large glass windows looking through, sees the motorcycle, sees Spike, sees everything play out, and he goes and actually saves Spike's life and prevents him from being hit by a car. So Spike no longer is using the hotline. Hoax was watching his cousin get hot and heavy with a girl in his bedroom. He was watching from one window to the other. Basically, Hoax sneaks into his room when Spike and the girl are gone. They're out having their date. He sneaks into his room, takes the girl's pants, puts it in his pocket, and finds this hotline. And he decides to call it, and he starts using it. Basically, the hotline told him to go to the movie theater to find the girl of his dreams. He goes and does that, and he actually has a nice night out with Spike's date, who Spike ditches. Or really, she ditches him because he left the date to go play poker for like an absurdly long amount of time. Like, for an amount of time that's just not okay. Actually, it's not okay at all to even just go, hey, I'm going to go play a hand of poker real quick while she's, like, down in the movie theater. But he goes and does that. She's annoyed. She leaves. And that's when Hoax and this girl meet up, and they actually have a nice night together. So Hoax gets seduced by this power that if all he has to do is call this number and get this advice and follow this advice, good things will happen to you. He gets seduced so much that he actually accepts the power from this hotline. So the demon on the other side of the phone gives him powers, and he slowly gets possessed and turns into like a demonic monster in the movie. So the way that Spike handled this hotline was that what happens is, the way this hotline works is you can call up, it will tell you a riddle, and this riddle tells you what to do, right? You do it and good things will happen to you. And you keep doing it. Eventually, it will tell you to do things that are not particularly good. And, that was the line for Spike. He didn't want to cross that line of doing things that were not particularly good. He has principles. He may look like a 1980s bad boy in school with the motorcycle and the leather jacket, but there's certain things he thinks is okay to do and certain things he doesn't think is okay to do. So he has principles, and he didn't want to cross that line. So that's why he stopped using the hotline in the movie. So the way Hoax handles this hotline is quite different than the way Spike handled this hotline. Hoax gets seduced by this power, this ability to just call up a number and follow the advice this mysterious voice on the other line tells him to do, and good things will happen to him. He was bullied in school badly, basically every day. So he started feeling more and more powerful. And this hotline was giving him the ability to hurt the people that hurt him. He was basically turning into a supervillain from a comic book where, the world was terrible to him. And then he finally had this ability that he can do something back to the people that were hurting him. And he didn't do it in a good way. He turned evil. He turned rather mean. Basically, he absorbed the power and got possessed from the demon on the other side of the phone. And he started going around killing the people that hurt him. The movie it's fun. It's fun. It really is. It's directed by Robert Englund. It has Nightmare on Elm Street vibes to it. It has Stephen King vibes to it as well. The thing is about this movie is that it has a fun premise. It really does. The premise is fun, but I feel like after a certain point in the movie, it turns into this okay, it's no longer we're dealing with this hotline, but now we're dealing with this nerdy kid who is now possessed by a demon going around killing people. This will take us to the end of the movie. I don't like the ending of this movie. I feel like this movie started strong. I feel like the midpoint of this movie was okay. I feel like the final showdown of this movie was not particularly good. This movie ends with a showdown with Hoax in their house. He's this super powerful demon that can create earthquakes and open up the earth. But for some reason, he's just hanging out in the house. He turned the house super cold. It's very comical how cold this house is. There's snow and ice everywhere. There's frozen cats in the shots. And that goes with the idea of evil. When evil is around, when there's evil presence around, things are cold. But, this movie kind of took that concept to an extreme. I'm okay with that. It looks super silly, very cheesy, but whatever. I'm okay with that. The thing is, after a certain point in that final battle, Hoax, Hoax, who's possessed by the demon, opens up the ground. So the floor of the entire house just falls down into this pit I'm assuming leads into hell, right? And it's just really silly. And, there's this battle that goes on. And it's just really silly how he was defeated. So Hoax gets defeated in the movie. And the way he's defeated is done in a really silly way. So basically, Hoax comes back. It's like Hoax in a demon form, but then Hoax's presence, his self, his consciousness, comes through and has a little talk with Spike. Spike is trying to get Hoax to remember who he is and fight the demon inside him. And Hoax comes out for a second. And then Hoax then goes away and it's the demon again. And then Spike just sort of runs and pushes Hoax out a window. And then Hoax just plummets. Because remember, he opened up the earth. He not only opened up the earth in the home, but also in the backyard. So no one's around to see that there's this giant pit in the backyard either that leads to hell. Basically, Spike pushes Hoax through a window, and Hoax just plummets all the way down to his demise into hell, I'm assuming, and the ground closes up. And that's how it ends. I'll tell you what I do like about this movie is I like the way this movie looks. This is an achievement with the cinematographer Paul Elliott and the set decorator Nancy Booth. They, and everyone else, of course, in this movie did a fantastic job too. The movie visually looks interesting. It has an amazing cinematographer behind it. Nancy Booth did an amazing job dressing the sets of this movie. Like this movie or hate this movie, I'll tell you this. There is not a single frame in this movie that looks boring. There's some crazy lighting setups in this movie There's a scene in the locker room where there's like lights coming in these really odd places, but it works. It feels very cartoony, it feels very comic booky, and a little cheesy, but it works. It works with the theme and the feel of the movie. The movie just looks interesting. There's certain shots that were blocked out that just look really good. Just like you can look and your brain can process everything that's going on in the scene. There's just really interesting transitions in the scenes where like the tone shifts and is done in a very good way. And that's Robert Englund doing an amazing job as a director in this movie. What I like the most, like my favorite scene in this movie, is actually not the scenes you're thinking of. Not the scenes when he is like getting possessed, when Hoax is getting possessed and going around killing people. It has really good visual effects and has really good makeup. But what I like most about this movie is actually very early on in the film. It's like right outside the school where Hoax is talking to Spike, and Spike's like with the girl he's dating. And there's just like this fun little awkward, weird interaction. I just liked seeing these characters interact with each other without like any of them being like a possessed monster. It was actually kind of fun. And that's why it reminded me of like a Stephen King novel, this part of the movie. I did enjoy just the interaction between the two cousins. I really did early on in the movie. It was fun. It really was. So what's a fun thing about this movie is, the private detective, while everything's going on in this movie, the private detective is on a journey. He's investigating this hotline, trying to get to the very center of this. And so he goes to the place where this hotline exists. It's just this call center that has all these different little hotlines like working there. And, he talks to the guy who runs the place, and he asks him about 976 Evil. And so the owner of the place shows him the broom closet. And it's very silly. There's cobwebs around. It looks like nothing has been touched in a while. And it's like this like automated system that like the owner of this building is like, oh, this is my pet project. I don't know. I guess no one cares about it, so no one's calling it. So I just shut it down. The other thing, too, to go with the idea that, this movie looks visually interesting, is the makeup in this movie is very good. Like when Hoax gets possessed by the demon and he slowly starts turning, it's really well done. The actor who plays Hoax has a very interesting face, but the makeup that this adds to that looks really good. He just looks more and more like a demon as the movie goes on. And honestly, they do a fantastic job. I think the makeup in this movie is probably one of the best things this movie has. So this movie can get very silly. This happens later on in the movie. Basically, Hoax is going around seeking revenge. He goes into the area where all like these like bullies are hanging out and playing poker. He enters. He already looks like a monster. But he's like, you see his silhouette, there's light behind him. You don't really see him too much. He's a little bit in shadow. But you can see he's not the nerd that they bully every single day in school. You can see he's something else. But basically, Hoax enters, and like the lead is like, our lucky day. And they're getting ready to like bully this kid. But he doesn't look like Hoax. He doesn't look like the nerd that they bully every day. He clearly looks like some kind of monster. It goes into some of that horror movie logic where their like IQs just sort of drop significantly. So basically, two of the kids take Hoax outside and they expect that they're just going to bully him, right? And the card game continues. So then he shows back up and he's clearly like a monster again, right? He's still a monster. He's got blood on his shirt. And everyone's like, hey, Hoax, what the hell? What are you doing? You want more? And so, and he shows up, walks over. And so, yeah, he's got these two hearts in his hands, and he scares everyone in the room. And, by this point in the movie is like a full-blown cartoon. It's just kind of funny how this movie is very silly and very campy. So this movie has a very Twilight Zone-esque ending, where it turns out the man that is running the call center is really either the devil or a demon. He's basically the demon behind this hotline. They show him, he has like a file of all the different people of souls he's collected. he puts a photo of Hoax into his folder, and it's like, oh, haha, and he's like, you know that this is his collection of souls. So yeah, it's very silly and a very funny, silly ending that something you would see in a Twilight Zone episode. So does this movie from 1988 still work today? I don't know. I don't know if it works today. If it would be made today, but this idea of this hotline that you call up, it's a very old, dated idea. And, I don't know if this movie would work today. If it would work, they would use like some sort of social media accounts that you would like ask questions to, or an app that you would ask questions to, and it would like give you a response back. Like maybe like an app would do it on your phone, would be it. And so it would be a different movie then if that's the case. So I don't know if this movie would necessarily work today. It's very cheesy, very silly, but visually it looks interesting. Well, that is the 1988 film 976 Evil. I will only recommend this movie if you are into Nightmare on Elm Street films, you think Robert Englund is cool, you want to watch a movie from the 80s that's a horror movie and that has Stephen King vibes to it. I will only recommend that you watch this movie if you want one of those things, honestly. It's fun, it's cool, it visually looks interesting, and you will have fun watching it, but your mind won't be blown. So by all means, go out and watch it. Bye.